Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping them gain authentic power, both on a personal and professional level. Our guest today is a woman who wrote a book addressing such needs. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the author of Steppin' Out with Attitude, Sister, Sell Your Dreams. And I want to welcome Anita Bunkley. Anita, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure.
Pleasure to have you.
Thank
Now,
you.
this is a little different than what you've been writing. You've written 5 novels.
Right.
What made you write this particular book?
Well, my novels have been, I call woman-centered, with the main character being a woman. And being on the road with 5 novels, I meet a lot of women.
Right.
And in promoting my novels and talking books with women, I would hear other stories. They would come up to me and say, I think I'd like to write a book. Or, I've written a book and I don't know how to promote it. Or, how did you get on TV? I saw you on television. I heard you on the radio. And they wanted a lot of information from me about how to step out with their idea and sell their dreams. And I began doing a lot of correspondence, talking on the phone. That eventually led to a workshop called Don't Be Shy.
Ah, perfect.
And I did that for many years. Like, don't be shy, promote yourself, step out there with little tips about how to access the media and get your book in bookstores and so forth. And that eventually led to another workshop that I began doing with African-American women on tour, which is an empowerment conference that travels across the United States, geared mainly toward African-American women. And the workshop I did for them was called Steppin' Out with Attitude. And that led to the book.
It's fabulous. Now, I got to tell you something. When I picked up the book, I don't start at the beginning of the book. I opened it up, and I opened to the middle of the book.
Okay.
And the first thing that I noticed was you were talking about negative people.
Yeah, there are negative people.
Okay. And I laughed about it because when I was moving to New York in 1979, I had 2 camps. I had those that were saying, go for it, Barrie, positive, supportive. And then I heard the other side that kept saying the negatives about moving to New York. Well, yes, there are a lot of negatives moving to New York, but there's a lot of positives. And through the years, it's turned out that all those negative people are no longer in my life.
That's right.
And just the positive have stayed.
Yes.
Now, would you like to address that? Because you talk about it throughout the book.
Yes, I do. It's very important to be aware of the dangers, the risks, and the obstacles that certainly you will face as moving to New York. But at the same time, if you really believe in your dream, if you really have that sense that, I know I can do this, and I know it's going to be tough, and you're practical about it, then you will be able to overcome all of these obstacles that the people who are telling you this is going to happen or that's going to happen have put in your mind. I think we have to be realistic, but at the same time, we can't let other people, these negative people, destroy our dreams. And I say in my book, you need a success entourage.
Right.
And I love that term.
Yes, it's beautiful.
That entourage of people around you who really want to see you be successful, who may warn you about the pitfalls, but at the same time say, go ahead and try. We'll be here if you have difficulties.
But it's very interesting. The people who are negative are really, I think they're fearful for themselves and don't have the confidence to do something.
They can be fearful. They can be a little bit envious. And maybe they're wishing, I wish I could take such a risk.
Right.
I wish I felt that I had that talent, that drive. And they really want to be a part of your dream. That's what I have found, is that people that may be on the sidelines and you think they're wishing you ill, they really are envious and they're just wishing I could be there.
Right. What would you say is one of the top reasons women don't move forward with their dreams?
They're afraid of change. And change. That's a very broad spectrum to think of, but no matter what you do, there will be change. There's always going to be change. There can be big change and there can be small change. And when women talk about, I'd like to start a business, but then I might have to quit my job, or I might have to go into debt, that's going to change something that they've been comfortable with. They've been comfortable
right.
in their job. They've been comfortable knowing that my paycheck covers all of my expenses.
There's nothing wrong with that, I'll
There's
tell you.
nothing wrong with that. But when you go into a new arena, it's that unknown, like, I don't know
Right.
what I'll face. Maybe I'm going to be more unhappy than I am now. And that fear of change, and then they come up with all of these excuses not to do it because they don't want to face the changes that will occur.
Well, it's a fear of failure.
Sure, sure, it's a fear of failure.
However, I think people accept failure here in the United States more so than anywhere else in the world.
Yes.
I mean, it's to your credit to fail, as a matter of fact.
You should learn from your failures.
Exactly.
And your rejections. As an aspiring novelist, I was rejected many, many, many times before I eventually did self-publish my first book and step out there and try to sell it. But failure and rejection really strengthened me, and if you can learn from it. I was always very happy when an editor, if they rejected me, told me why. And I would look at the reasons why they didn't accept the book and say, okay, if I need to work on that, then I'm going to work on that. So if you find yourself failing or being rejected, kind of get to the root of why and see if there's something that you can work on to just move forward.
So basically what you're saying is take the negative, turn it into a positive,
right,
and move forward to
right.
make yourself a better person.
Well, you really should. Otherwise, you can just wallow in failure for the rest of your life, and I certainly wasn't going to do that. So I thought, I have no choice but to take the advice that I'm given and move to the next level.
What would you hope that women learn mostly from this book and take away?
I hope they learn how wonderful they are. The book is really founded and grounded in an assessment process where I ask them to start assessing their skills, their talents, looking at their own attitudes, and finding out what you really have going for yourself. Don't dwell on the negatives. Certainly negatives exist. But I say women walk past mirrors and look in mirrors, and we're looking to see what's wrong. You know, is my hair okay? Is my skin looking good today? Or,
right.
or my makeup? What's wrong with me? And I said, we need to start looking in the mirror and seeing all the things that are right with us. And in my workshops, I do an assessment process where I ask women, think of something you know you do well. You just know you do this well. It may be something very small in your opinion. Maybe it's baking a great pineapple upside-down cake. But
good.
If you do it well, think about those feelings you get when you know you've done this thing well, and then transfer those feelings into the world of work or a profession or service or talent, and keep that feeling alive of feeling good about yourself.
What common thread do you find through the stories of the women that you have interviewed?
Well, of course, they all have dreams. They all have something that they really care about. They've had some difficulty perhaps achieving a success with this dream, but they've all had something that they felt they couldn't let go of. And maybe there would be times in their life when it would just really be on their minds, and then it might disappear for perhaps years. But when I say, what's on your mind most of the time? What is kind of always there? And I always wanted to be a published author. And when I think about it now as a young girl, I love to read. Books were very important to me and my family. And I would always dream of stories, and I realize now that's been on my mind for a very long time. And that's what I think is the common thread in all of the stories, the anecdotal stories in Stepping Out with Attitude, are these women all had a closely held dream that for some reason they weren't able to bring, to fruition without a little push from themselves.
Okay, well, let's talk about a little push. You mentioned in your book how you got your push.
Yes.
Why don't you share it?
Well, I got my push when I went to a writer's conference, and I had self-published my first book, peddled it around out of the trunk of my car and sold it in the church and in the beauty shop and all those places. And I just was determined that I was going to do a book, and I wanted a real New York agent, I wanted a real publisher, and I wasn't going to do this anymore. And I entered my book, Black Gold, into a contest at the University of Texas, and it took first place in the contest.
Oh, wonderful.
And Denise Marshall was an agent attending the conference, and she came up to me and she said, that book is interesting, it's very interesting. When you finish it, send it to me in New York. I had an agent. I was over the moon. I thought, a real New York agent. And over a period of months, then Denise and I worked together to shape the book, and she was able to get me a contract with Penguin.
fabulous.
how
But
it happened.
before the book was even written, let's go back. Who gave you the push?
The push, I would say, my mother,
Uh-huh.
my family. My mother was a dressmaker. She used to create beautiful dresses for all the women in the city of Columbus. She always had her own little business going on the side, and she was a real entrepreneur, and she stepped out and showcased her talent, you know, a long time ago. And she would create designs and dresses for me, and I have 4 sisters. And she would dress the 5 of us, and we'd put on these little fashion shows. And so she taught us how to walk and stand and present ourselves in front of audiences all over the city as she promoted her dressmaking business. And I think that that really gave me a very early sense of stage presence, a sense of it's okay to stand in front of a group of people and feel good about yourself.
And stretch yourself.
Yes, and stretch yourself. At a very young age, I was learning how to walk down a runway and so forth. So I really do credit my mother with having the foresight to train me and my sisters that way.
That's fabulous.
Yes.
'Cause it shows that your mother was an entrepreneur, as you said, way back when.
Yes.
Most women weren't an entrepreneur.
Absolutely, absolutely. And she had 6 children, and she worked and would come home, and I can remember going to bed at night with her in front of the sewing machine working on a fabulous ball gown for some lady who was going to a society event, and I'd get up in the morning and she'd still be sewing.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
That's
I can
devotion.
remember those days, yes.
What would you say would be the one element that women don't use or do to enhance their visibility?
The one thing that they don't use, I think, as I mentioned before, I don't think they use all of their skills and all of their talents. I think they just kind of scratch the surface of their talent and what they have to offer. And we tend to kind of shortchange ourselves and downplay ourselves and not really tap into the full potential and stretch ourselves. In my book, I tell women to go deep to those feelings of satisfaction and stretch yourself. And it's risky and it's a little scary, but, you know, what's the worst that can happen?
You fail.
Yeah, and then you get back up and try again, you know. It's not brain surgery.
But it's not so much a failure, it's making a fool of yourself that's
Yes.
so difficult.
But, you know, I don't know if you make a fool of yourself, and that, again, you can say, oh, I'm going to look so foolish, but in front of whom? Who cares? What is someone going to do to me if I do fail? You know, it's not like you're going to be banished to an island for the rest of your life if you fail. You just
Pick
put
yourself up.
and keep going. Right, right.
In your book, you talk about the 3 Ds.
Yes.
Why don't you expand on that for us?
The 3 Ds the keys, I think, that are the underpinnings of stepping out and showcasing your talent are desire, discipline, and drive. You have to really want something to showcase yourself, you know, and I ask my sisters, what do you really want? And how much do you want it? Do you want it enough to go through all of the trials and tribulations? Will you be able to stay the course? How much do you want something? And then if you're lucky enough to get on the road of realizing your dream, you're going to have to discipline yourself. You know, things don't just happen. When I go into schools and talk to young people and they'll look at some of my novels and they say, you wrote all those pages? And I say, yes, I wrote all those words. And I said, books don't just appear. It means I sit down every day at my computer from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. and I write.
Like a business.
Day after day after day, and that's how a book is written. And I don't think young people have that concept of the time that goes into it, the discipline. All the times I tell my friends I can't go to lunch. No, I cannot go shopping. I have to discipline myself. And in the book, I talk about the need to manage your time, to become organized. You know, you can't spend your time looking for things. You need to be organized. And stories from women who have succeeded, some of their tips, what keeps them disciplined, what keeps them on target. And the third part is drive. You know, what fuels your engine, what keeps you going.
The paycheck, the satisfaction.
Satisfaction, sure. Maybe
Yes.
it's not money right away. Sometimes we don't see the monetary reward for some years to come. But like you said, the satisfaction.
It's like you did it, you've achieved it,
Yes.
you've stepped out and
Yes.
took a chance. It's
Yeah.
really terrific. What did you learn from all this? I mean, writing all your 5, what did you learn from writing all your novels?
What have I learned about myself or
Yes.
about other women?
Both.
Both. Well, I've learned about myself that I could write a nonfiction book. I was a little apprehensive at first, having written 6 works of fiction. The transition, I thought, oh, let me do it. I hope I can do it. But I knew that I was highly organized. I knew that I could get the women's stories. So again, I went back and assessed my own talent, my own skill, my own experience and said, okay, I can do this. So I've been very pleased that the book so far is very well received and that sister friends across the country are embracing the book. So I learned that about myself. And what I've learned from other women is that they really do have an awful lot in common. And within the book, it's a multicultural book. There are stories from African-American women, Hispanic women, Asian women, white women, and they all bring a unique perspective to the idea of showcasing themselves. And although they have unique experiences, there are a lot of common threads among all women. There's a real sisterhood going on out there.
Well, what is the common thread? Because you talk about lots of them. I know we talked about the negative people that surround you, which you don't want.
I think the common thread is they want more for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They want more for themselves, and they're willing to go after it. Maybe it's just they want to. There's a story about one woman who was on welfare with 9 children, and she kept saying, I want more than this. I won't settle for this. And how she now, that story, she now is the manager of a social service program in the city of Fort Worth. The woman who was a nurse for 12 years, who wanted to be a musician, and she says, I love my nursing profession, but I want more. I don't want to leave this world without having really showcased my musical talent. So they've all wanted more and realized that there was more to give.
What do you tell young people? Do you tell them the same thing?
I tell them pretty much the same thing. I think building self-esteem of young people is just a high priority. And the women in my stories, many of them give back, they volunteer, they mentor, they teach. And one of the most important attitudes in my book, Stepping Out with Attitude, is the attitude of gratitude. And I say, I'm very grateful for all the blessings that I've received. I'm very grateful that my books have been well received. I'm grateful to be here with you today. And I think we have a lot to be thankful for, most women. And so when you reach back and help a young person who may be kind of without any hope, without any real sense that I can ever be anything or do anything, and you show them that you can, that's the best thing you can do, is share your blessings.
I think it's beautiful because I read the book and I think children should be able to read it. I mean, I shouldn't say children. I mean
young adults.
Young adults, because
sure.
it gives hope. So, because a lot of students today don't know what they want to do, and I don't care if you're from a wealthy family or if you're from a poor family.
Yes.
They don't know what they want to do,
Yes.
and they don't have any hope, they don't have any drive or ambition, and I think this book is absolutely fabulous for it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
One of the things that women are notorious for is that they're lousy with finances. You want to talk about it?
Well, women sometimes have attitudes toward finance that don't help them manage finances well.
Right.
And I think our attitudes toward money are very often shaped by the attitudes our parents had, and as we grow up in a household, and whether the pennies were pinched or we splurged, I'm certain that that must influence the way we approach money. And it's interesting, I talk about shunning the poverty mentality, where sometimes women feel like, I don't deserve. I can't, spend $300 on a suit. I'd never do that. I don't deserve it. Where they really probably could afford it, but they just feel guilty about spending any money on themselves. I've had women tell me that I'm successful now. I have my own business. I'm driving a Lexus, but I really drive my Toyota to work because I don't want people at work to know that I am so successful. And I don't want my sisters to, talk about me because I have a big car and a big house. And this kind of fear of success is a very interesting concept about money that I found with women. And I say, you drive your Lexus to work and you wear your designer suits if that's what makes you happy, and don't feel that poverty is a virtue or that you shouldn't be wealthy. I think if you have achieved success and you're using your wealth to help your brothers and sisters come along and you're giving back to the community, then be happy.
Show that you can do it.
Yes.
No matter, especially if you've come up from the, like 9 children and have established yourself in society and doing
Don't feel guilty.
No, I think, it's kind of like, I did it, you can do it, and why aren't you doing it?
Yes.
Basically what it is.
Yeah, there's a chapter in the book called That's a Lot of Money, and there are stories about women who have amassed fortunes. And a story from Kathy Hughes, who is a media mogul. I think she owns like 15 radio stations, started with one little AM station. She slept on the floor in this radio station, and now she's a media mogul, and she tells her story about the first time she went to the bank to borrow $1 million, and all that happened to her, and the mental, you know, stress she was under because she was going to borrow $1 million, but she got her $1 million.
Fabulous,
Yeah.
absolutely fabulous. One of the things that I use as a business tool, and I can't stress this enough when I meet people, is a business card.
Yes. Yes.
And I find that a lot of women don't have a business card, they don't carry a business card, and they don't think very much of a business card. You address that also in the book. Well, you address a lot of things in the book.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in the book. But to me, a business card, it doesn't mean you have to be in business. Especially writers. A lot of my writer friends who aren't even published yet, they have their little card and it says writer right on the card, so that when I meet them and talk with them, they give me their card. I think it's a way to make sure you are remembered. And I think 30 million business cards change hands every day. There's some statistic like that in the book. It's the easiest and most economical way to pass information along to yourself and to make sure that you are remembered and not forgotten. So I'm a big believer in business cards. And when I meet someone and they say, oh, I don't have a card, I think, well, you may have just missed an opportunity for me to put you in my network and help you along. And I'm always happy if I know of something that I think this is what Judy wants. And I met Judy at the conference, and I pull out her card and I say, Judy, you need to meet this person. So networking is really what it's all about, and helping each other.
It's very true. I'll share a story with you in the audience that my girlfriend, I needed a present for one of my girlfriends. It was her birthday. And one of my friends is a poet and a writer. So I called her up and I said, I need you to do something for tomorrow. I've got to get in the mail tomorrow. Now, she's out of town, out of state, so she wrote something up for me. I mailed it out as a gift. A week later, somebody said to her, she was unemployed at the time, and said, what are you doing these days? She said, oh, I'm writing poetry. So the woman said, well, give me your card. Well, my girlfriend was very quick on her feet and said, oh, it's at the printer. So she went home and designed a card and had it printed and got the business and started a whole new career.
Wonderful.
I mean, that's how important business cards are.
They really are.
Don't realize it.
Because we're all moving, you know, and I meet a lot of people moving around, and if I collect a business card, then definitely I can find you again. And it's going to be difficult for me to find you or help you, or for you to help me, vice versa, if you don't have something to leave that the person can refer to, because we're really very busy.
It's a signature of who you are.
It definitely is. And even though you can spend a lot of money on a business card or not very much money for a business card, make sure the ones that you carry are clean and make an attractive presentation.
Not dog-eared.
Yeah, dog-eared and dirty and have writing all over them. Because it's an extension of who you are. And I think whatever material you hand out, it represents you as it circulates.
Very true. Now, you speak 3 languages.
Yes.
Okay. English, of course, Spanish, but French. What made you pick up French?
Well, I loved language. Just languages, and when I was in high school, I took one of these little courses where you could sample a lot of different languages, and they would only let me take 2. I would have taken 3 or 4.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
So all through high school, I took French and Spanish together, and I had to get special, dispensation to do this and everything. I remember my mother was a French teacher, and so I kind of had heard a little French around just from her teaching French. And so I took French and Spanish all through high school. And then when I went to college, I majored in French and Spanish and got a double major, and then taught it in private and public schools for a long time. So,
that's smart.
But I love language, and my love of words. And to me, it was fascinating that you could write a sentence in 3 different ways that would mean the same thing. It was like a giant crossword puzzle, just putting things together. I loved it.
Well, just think, when your books get translated to another language, you can do the whole translation.
I can read them at least.
Exactly.
Right.
What would you say was 1 or 2 of the most exhilarating moments in researching this book?
The most exhilarating moments, I would say, first of all, when my agent called and told me that we did have a publisher for the book.
That's always good.
Oh, that was very good. As I say, moving from fiction to nonfiction, I was very apprehensive, and luckily HarperCollins liked the book and signed me on, so that was very exhilarating for me to know that the project really did have life, did have a purpose, because I wasn't quite sure, although I'd done the workshops, that I could do it in book form. So that was very exhilarating. And then when I went to my first African American Women on Tour seminar this summer, and the book wasn't even out yet, And the introduction to the book is written by Maria Dowd, who is the executive director of African American Women on Tour. And apparently at the opening session for this huge conference with thousands of women, she read from her advanced copy of the book, and everyone was talking about stepping out when the conference opened. And I kept thinking, how do they know about this book? But that's, you know, that is kind of shows the value of networking and bringing other sisters into your dream. All of the women who are in the book, you know, they shared with me freely of their time so that I could create the book, and now they're all out, you know, talking about the book and getting their sister friends to buy the book. So, you know, it really is help one another, and I love that aspect of it.
What would you say are some of the profound things in stepping out with attitude?
Profound? It may sound trite, but what I think is really profound, I have a attitude adjustment tip in there that says, don't believe the hype. You know, we're hyped, we're told this, we're told that, and those messages work on us. You know, over time we take them in and we tend to believe them, especially if there's statistics that are quoted over and over, your odds of succeeding, or the number of black women who will never, you know, get married, are going to be single forever. All those kinds of odds and statistics that are just, you know, they come at us all the time, we start to believe them. And then we think, we'll never find a husband, or we'll never get our book published, or I'll never be able to be the president of a radio station. And that's not true. It absolutely is not true. And I tell young people and my sister friends that every day you turn on TV or you read the paper, someone beat those odds.
Right, it's a
some
challenge.
unknown person becomes a rock star, or some unknown writer becomes a bestseller. People do beat odds, and I think we have to just dismiss a lot of that hype and that statistical data that we settle for and accept as true, and we don't question it.
If you were going to leave the audience with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Believe that you are wonderful, and believe that you have talent that you haven't even begun to tap.
That's wonderful. I got to tell you, this is a great book. I
Thank
love
you.
it. It's paperback. It's
Yes.
easy to handle. You have a lot of, I was going to say, workshops within the book.
Yes, worksheets and little exercises.
Right, and they tell a lot of different stories, and it's something I think everybody can relate to, as well as your resource collection in here between websites, email sites, as far as books and different people to talk to. It's fabulous.
Well, I appreciate that, and I didn't do it all alone. It took the network of sisters out there that I could call on that helped me put it together, and I can't thank all of the women who are in the book enough, because whenever I hit a brick wall and I think, I need some statistics about this industry, oh, I can get it for you. They were very, very giving and sharing, and they were a big part of putting the book together.
Well, Anita, I want to thank you so
it's
much
my
for
pleasure.
joining me
My
tonight.
pleasure.
It's been wonderful having
you.
you. And if you would like any more information from Anita or myself, we'd love to hear from you. Please write us at The Women's Connection. Thank you. Would you just sign this for me,
I'll
please?
be happy to.
Thank you. For joining me tonight. It's been wonderful having you. And I hope everybody goes out and buys Stepping Out, Sister, Sell Your Dreams by Anita Bunkley. It's wonderful. And I want to thank you for joining us today.